Hello and welcome to Nosotros, the podcast about Mexican-American politics, history, cultura, y más. Brought to you in part by the Gámez Law Firm. I'm your host, Elaine Ayala, Metro columnist for the San Antonio Express News. My guest today is Ana Sandoval. She's a climate scientist, a former 3-term councilwoman, and now senior director of sustainable futures at Nalcap, the National Association for Latino Community Asset Builders. Welcome to Nosotros, Ana.
Thank you, Elaine. I'm very glad to be here, and thank you so much for the invitation.
Before we get to questions, I usually play a game of this or that, but for you, I made it best and worst.
Okay.
Because it's all about climate change. So you ready?
I'll try my best.
Best fossil fuel for San Antonians to use.
There is no such thing.
Oh, God, you didn't let me get
I'm
to it.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so I was going to say coal, which no, of course not. Oil or natural gas?
Least worst would be, well, it depends.
Well, least worst for our homes.
At your home, the least worst would be natural gas.
Or
gas. Let's just
natural gas.
They're all natural.
Yeah,
in a way.
Yeah. And then in our cars, it would be best to have an electric car.
Correct.
Do you drive an electric car?
I do drive an electric car.
What is it?
It's a Tesla.
Oh my God, you drive a Tesla. Was this before we know what we know about Elon Musk?
My gas car finally died in 2023. And so I didn't have too much time to do research. So I'd heard great things, and it is extremely convenient. But yes, it was before the doging.
And so you just plug in somewhere?
Yes, at home. At home, I plug in. Mm-hmm.
Do you plug in every night?
No.
You don't have to?
No, I don't. If it's particularly low, I'll plug in, but I'll try to do it once a week. And I just have to say it's extremely convenient. No oil changes, no stopping at the gas station, no worrying about the fluctuation of gas up or gas down. But I do have to say it is so aerodynamic that my mom, my daughter, and myself have all bumped our heads multiple times getting into the vehicle because it's the door is at an angle. So when you come in, you have to keep that in mind. So.
Best renewable energy source for San Antonio, and I'll list them first: solar, wind, or hydro.
I mean, all of those are great. I think solar is something we can do locally, and wind does take more space. So I'm going to go with solar.
Yeah. And you can put them on your rooftop. And do you have those on your rooftop?
I don't, but I am about to get a new roof, and I'm so excited because I'm going to get tons of insulation ISO board on there. So that'll happen next week. Very excited about it.
That is exciting. Best carbon source in our region, and that is a reservoir that releases more carbon than it absorbs, as AI told me this morning.
Okay, great. You're friends with AI. Good.
Yep. You have to be best carbon source in our region.
I would say in many years from now, that's going to be the Arboretum.
Oh, how wonderful.
Yeah.
We just did a podcast with Ms. Quiñones, who's the lead. Oh, that's wonderful. It's like adding extra lungs.
Right. Mm-hmm.
What does a good carbon footprint look like?
Oh, obviously the best carbon footprint is the one you don't see in the sand, right? It's not there. So are you asking me, what does that lifestyle look like?
Yes.
Given what we have available to us today as consumers in the region, it would probably be a very energy efficient home with, ISO board in the roof and possibly an electric vehicle. Mm-hmm. And, you don't buy bottled water, you drink it from the tap, your saw source, those types of things, and buying locally as much as possible.
Yeah. Okay. What is the highest temperature this is really for you to be creative. what is the highest temperature that really we can sustain before we just croak?
I don't know if I want to be creative with this. So it's actually not that high if you are outdoors working and it's humid. So, for instance, it could be in the 90s. It could be in the high 80s. If you are doing strenuous work outside and you haven't had enough water and you haven't had enough rest, you could find yourself experiencing a heat illness and, collapsing. Could also find yourself dizzy and then falling and having another type of injury. And we know falls are, in the construction industry, the highest cause of death in the construction industry.
We need air conditioning, right?
We here in San Antonio, yes, we do need air conditioning to have healthy lives. For some people who, like today, right? What we're experiencing today is an extreme heat day. There are people who can probably not be safe indoors without air conditioning.
I'm thinking of those little old people or babies who don't have air conditioning in their homes. We've got to get more creative too, and more generous to people. Okay, sustainability, that's what you do now, and we'll get into what your job is, but what does sustainability look like in a place like South Texas?
So basically what we want to ask ourselves is, can we maintain the quality of our natural environment? Can we protect the quality of our natural environment? And what do we need to do as users of the natural environment, as consumers, as people who work and live here? What do we need to do to maintain that? And that's ultimately that's sustainability. It's not being, a tree hugger or simply a nature lover. It's how can we keep this alive and at this level or better for us when we're older and for the people who come after us. So
plant a tree.
Oh, plant all the trees. Plant all the trees.
Recycle.
Yeah, but I feel like we rely a lot on recycling, and absolutely it's better to recycle
than not
to. But
it's a crutch, don't you think?
It's, there's a term for that.
Maybe not a crutch, but it's...
Yeah, there's a scientific term for something like that where we, I drive a Prius, so therefore I can drive a lot more miles, right? And you sort of allow yourself. Really, the better solution, if you can get to it, is, do I really need to use this or get a new X, Y, or Z item and then recycle it, right? So on council, I talked a lot about ad nauseum, right, about disposable water bottles. And everyone said, oh, don't worry, it's fine, we recycle. Well, there's still a lot of energy that it takes to produce that water bottle and that you're going to lose, right, when that ultimately gets recycled. But worldwide, we only recycle 10% of our plastics. So a good amount of them do end up in the oceans, right, as we know. So really, it's about reducing some of the things we don't absolutely need to use.
Stop buying so much.
And, for some people, that's heresy, right, to say that, because our economy, our tax dollars
all depend on us being spenders.
So let's think about spending smartly, right?
Corn or flour? That's my last one.
Oh my God, flour. I'm sorry, but flour.
Right? And you were born in Mexico, so yes,
in the northern part of Mexico. My mom was born a little further south, so she's all corn all the time.
But I love flour too, with a little toasting. So good. Okay, let's start by looking back a little, and then we'll move forward. We'll get to your departure at some point.
But, okay. But let's. Okay.
But what would you say was your most significant contribution to the city while you were on council?
Well, I think there were a couple of things that were very meaningful to me that I worked on. And one of them was the opening of a new park in District 7. It is not far from the Bandera and Hillcrest intersection. It's called West Quill Park. It was about 3 acres, and the community really wanted that to be. There was an old house on there that eventually was demolished, and they really wanted a park. And the day that we did the groundbreaking for that will go down in history for me as one of the most beautiful moments on council, because we were giving away plants and trees and beautiful, greenery, and everyone from the neighborhood came. And I had these handwritten with crayon letters from a family with 3 children, and thanking me for bringing the park. And I love to take credit, but really it was the Parks Department, right, that made all the transaction happen, negotiated with the seller, did all that technical stuff, and all I had to do was ask for them. And for me, that was beautiful. It's in operation today. The other thing that to me was very meaningful, I do get credited sometimes, well, a lot, for the climate plan. But at the end of the day, it's really the implementation that matters, right? There's a framework, but it's when the rubber hits the road and when you make that difference in somebody's life that matters. So for me, even though this wasn't exactly word per word in the climate plan, it's when we put forward the proposal to protect outdoor workers from extreme heat. Because as much as, we can talk about greenhouse gases and tons, that just doesn't, it doesn't stick to our heart. It doesn't speak to our hearts, right?
That's right.
But when I tell you, Elaine, my father was a construction worker for, 30 or 40 years, right? That's how we put beans on the table. Mm-hmm. And I want him, if I had the opportunity in the future to go back in time, right, and to make him safer by doing this, that's what I would do. And it wasn't just my family, right? There are many families, right? San Antonio is constantly going through a boom of construction, right? So it's about protecting the people who built our city. So that was very meaningful to me.
Oh, of course. You served District 7 for 5.5 years, resigned in 2023. Mm-hmm. So I know one of the big thing you did when you got off council, but tell us what you've been doing since then. Mm-hmm. Personal and professional.
Oh, sure. Well, let's start with professional. So the first thing I did the day after I left council was start a new job, and that was with the hospital district here in Bexar County. And it was a really good fit for me. I was ready for some quiet time. At council, you're going from one thing to another. You're in meetings, you're in talking. And this was, you're talking. Well, I liked to talk on council. Not everybody did, but I had an opportunity to work with the Innovation and Health Equity team at University Health. And some of what we did was looking for new ways, right, to help improve the population of Bexar County. And I ended up working on a number of grant submissions, and the team that I worked with brought in $15 million for maternal health in San Antonio. So that was great. It was a wonderful learning experience for me, especially as a new mom. All of that was, I could, give my personal 2 cents, on this application, we should consider this, we should consider the other. And I also got a chance to work with an all-female team there. I think there was 1 man on our floor. No, there were 2, but you barely ever saw them. Usually their doors were closed and the women's doors were open. So that was also a wonderful experience.
And you worked on health equity at this juncture, correct?
Correct.
So in addition to, health equity has been talked about so much in terms of our south side or the southern portion of our county as opposed to the northern portion. So where are we? How would you assess that issue now?
Well, one of the I haven't looked at the most recent data, so I don't think I could quote that to you at this moment. However, these aren't types of changes that happen quickly. They take generations to make changes with. So shortly before I came on council, the Bexar County Health Collaborative had done the assessment of life expectancy and that difference, right? And what we looked at was, what they saw was 16 years within some parts of the county and other parts. Now that's significant. That is all.
That people on the southern end live 16 years fewer. On average, yes, yes. And I think I've heard 20 years.
Yeah, sometimes.
More recently.
Yes, I think it's really that we're saying we're going into 2 decades of difference. So whether it's 16 or 20, that's the range that we're in. And I would say that is 20 years is a generation, right? Yes. So that's the difference between someone living to see their grandchild or great-grandchild and somebody not living to see their great-grandchild. If you were to, so I've heard this statistic in public health school, if you were to eliminate cancer through all cancer, you would extend life expectancy in the U.S. by 3 years.
God, that's not a lot.
Right, but what does it take for us to eliminate cancer, right? Mm-hmm. So the elimination of, or the reduction of the life expectancy difference that we see in San Antonio means a lot of work, that we have to do a lot of work.
In comparison.
Right.
Okay. You're now working in sustainability.
Yeah.
Tell us what you're doing at Nalcap, and tell us what Nalcap is.
Sure. So Nalcap, you read out the name. It's very long, but there's something in there called community asset builders, right? And we focus on the Latino community. So really, we're a membership-based organization. We have over 200 members, and it's national. And all the groups that we serve do some type of community development. It can be community economic development. It can be affordable housing developers, and they're all nonprofits. So I'll give you an example of some of the groups that we serve here in San Antonio are Merced Housing, the YWCA, SAGE, Prosper West, and Lift Fund, right, which is an extremely unique organization nationally. So we have a lot of members here in San Antonio, in South Texas, Austin, and we also serve Washington, D.C. and Puerto Rico.
And you serve a lot of sort of newer Latino communities in the American South. Is that correct?
Oh, you've done your homework. We have a group in at least one in Alabama called HICA, and we have a number in Florida as well, and in Georgia. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, this is where we're seeing Latino populations suddenly rise up, like New Orleans, where there's just a huge community of Latinos. Okay, I think it's significant that the person who replaced you on council was the legendary Rosie Castro. And I wanted to give you an opportunity to talk about how your departure allowed for this temporary ascent for Rosie.
Oh, when I was going to step down and considering that, I knew that it was the right decision for me. It is what my family needed from me at the time. But there was still a huge burden, this sense of guilt, right? Like I'd made a commitment to the voters that I would be there for them during those 2 years. And you left before, how many months was it before the end of your term? About 4 months, I think, 4 to 5 months. Mm-hmm. And I left in January, and the term would have ended June 1st. Mm-hmm. But when it all fell into place that Rosie Castro would succeed me, I felt like that burden was lifted, right? Like somehow this was all in the cosmos and meant to be.
It was beautiful. And, she ran so many years before when it was impossible to win because it was at large and everything was stacked against her and other barrio candidates. So she got her day.
She got her day, and I wish it had been a lot. Like, if I had known she wanted to be,
you would have left earlier.
I might have left earlier. But no, I think it was beautiful. She made so many contributions in such a short amount of time with just the who she is, right? Mm-hmm. The gravitas that she brings to any conversation. And I'm also very just pleased that we were aligned when it came to serving the people who didn't always have a voice at the council. And the fact that she was able to do that, again, pleased me as a constituent and brought a lot of ease as someone who had left their seat.
So there was a little bit of an elephant in the room as you left council, and this is deeply personal, so I understand if you don't want to address it, but there was a verbal outburst against you at the time by someone you knew very well.
Yes.
And I wanted you to talk a little bit about what you advise girls and other women in their own relationships when a situation arises that is abusive, and what you would counsel them.
I think first that it's important for all women or men to know, because this isn't all on women. Let's put that out there.
Yeah, domestic violence statistics show that some of the victims of domestic violence are indeed men.
Yes, that's true. I guess what I mean to say is that it is also how we raise our men and the expectations that we have upon them that sometimes has brought us to this point. So I would say that it's important for all men and women to be able to identify what is abuse and to recognize it, because as something that for so long, right, in many families it was hidden or not openly discussed. So it's very easy to deny that is happening to you in your family, and that's something you want to speak about publicly or even admit to. So I think first of all, it's just know what it is and be able to call it what it is when you see it.
And call it out.
Yeah.
And I was very glad to see that members of council called it out too.
They did. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
All right. Tell us about your work at Nalcap.
So I am. It feels like a little bit of a non sequitur, but let me jump in. So I'll start with, I was leaving University Hospital. I think I told you I'd wanted some quiet time, and that was great. And I came to a point where I was really ready to be more community facing and to also do something in the space of the environment, of the natural environment. So this opportunity arose, and I knew very little about Nalcap before I jumped in. They had worked with the city of San Antonio on the mayor's housing policy task force. When Ron first came into office, this was one of his landmark policy initiatives, and they were part of that. They helped with the data analysis. They helped with some policy recommendations. And when I bumped into Nalcap last year, they were beginning a sustainability program to support their members. So my role is to develop this program. The idea is to provide our members the resources that they feel they need. So some of the things that we do for members include we provide capital, we provide loans for their own projects or for them to lend to small businesses in their community.
Give us an example of a project.
Sure. For instance, I work a lot with our lending director. So we have affordable housing developers, such as there's one in New Mexico called Tierra del Sol. And they have installed solar on just about every housing development that they've built. So we provide the capital for the housing. We're one of the many sources of funding that they have in order to build those, and then they pay that back.
That's so wonderful. You start out with solar panels on your
That's
house.
one example. Yes. Mm-hmm.
That's awesome.
So that's Tierra del Sol, but not all of our members are doing that across across the country. So for those who are interested, what we anticipate doing is providing a peer learning experience for that. How would you figure that into your housing development? When does it make sense to do that? And how might you find some funding for that?
All right. Now let's move to the more global climate change. We've just had some of the hottest days. It feels like the hottest day ever, yesterday and today. And we're in for it now for the start of the summer. Memorial Day is always the big day that, okay, it started now. How have we done? Assess how we're doing as a people in facing this problem.
So I'll tell you, climate change is by far the most difficult environmental challenge, not just to face, but to get buy-in for climate change action. Because, here in San Antonio, we have many people who appreciate the natural environment. We've got beautiful parks, reserve areas. Even, our mayor worked on the bat. I call it the bat cave issue right before he was mayor. So there's definitely a profound respect for the natural environment as people here in San Antonio. We also have people who are excellent water conservationists, right? SAWS and their outreach taught us decades ago about that. And I still report water wasters because I think it's terrible to water a sidewalk. Okay. Yeah, keep it in. No. And we also have almost like a religious appreciation for our aquifer, right?
Agreed. Like it's something that's sacred almost.
Absolutely.
That we're so lucky.
We are. Not every community has this, and caring for it is. And in the population, I find that is a widespread shared feeling, right? That's sanctity of the aquifer and all these other things. But when it comes to something like climate change, we're just not there yet. There are definitely, students or the younger generation does appreciate that more. But it's just such a hard problem to explain, and the results are so disconnected, right? There's so many steps to get from the action to the impact of climate change. And it's very easy to dismiss the impact as unrelated and to link it to what you did. So I think worldwide there is a communication problem about that. But what we're lucky in is that just about anything that we do that's going to help us with this problem is also going to help us in so many other ways. So just a few minutes ago, I was telling you, I'm so excited because I'm finally getting a new roof, right? I've been living in that house for a while. I'm finally getting a new roof. So I'm going to get it insulated. The roofer told me about all these different types of roofs, and why am I excited? Well, not just because, I'm going to use less coal from CPS. That's personally, right? Like, that's not making me jump up and down. I'm really sorry to all my climate friends out there if that's disappointing you. But because it's also going to mean that I'm more comfortable. My child is going to be more comfortable. And my bill will be lower.
Yes. And when you set it at 78, it is cool.
Right?
Because my roof is old. And so when I set it at 78, sometimes it's at 79.
It's
in
hot.
reality. Right. So I want to lower it some more.
So I think that's really the language that we probably want to have around this. Is we want to look for what are those additional benefits that we can have and still save the climate, because it's really hard for any one individual to take that responsibility on of saving the planet.
It's also so hard to talk about it globally and locally, because globally you think of icebergs and, losing so much of that sort of beauty and landscape in places that are cold, that are melting. And to equate it then to the hot deserts, the hotter we are, the higher the electricity bill. So it's all over the place. So messaging has been such an issue.
It's very hard. So I was talking with some women at the Hispanas Unidas conference that had its anniversary last year, and so I told them that there's some myths when it comes to climate change that I hear among the Latino population. So I'm gonna share those.
Okay,
with
excellent.
You. And so one of them is I don't have time to save the earth, right? That it's that sometimes there's this thought that we're saving
I'm so busy.
Well, there's that, right? Yeah, we'll talk about the busy. That's the second myth, okay? But that it's about saving the earth or saving the tree for the sake of the tree or the butterfly for the sake of the butterfly. And so that's not what we're doing. That's not some people that may be motivating for them, but at the end of the day, I'm going to say something very stark and possibly that it's hard to hear, but the earth will be here. We may not be here, but the earth will continue to be here.
Very interesting. Okay.
What we're doing is making sure that the earth is still hospitable to us as a species. We're saving ourselves. We're not saving the earth.
Okay. Aha moment. Sustainability.
Right.
That we're saving it for us so that we can live in it.
Right. So
that's why you're over there and I'm over here.
myth number one, right? Uh-huh. It's about saving ourselves. Number two is I also hear it's not a Latino issue. It's not for Hispanics, right? Let those other groups.
Well, there was something to it at the beginning of the climate movement when so many of the green organizations or environmental organizations were primarily white, and they were saving sacred spaces and sacred animals and, wrapping themselves around a tree, right? So there was that perception at the beginning that that's what the environmental movement was.
I think you're absolutely right. They may have had the luxury, right, of being able to think about that, identify that, while other populations like ours may have been worried about, putting food on the table and having jobs and single-member districts, right? But we can't let that continue to be the case because we live here too. Right? So it affects us all. So what I mentioned earlier about, and what you mentioned about the hot outdoors, right? And the babies who don't have AC or the older individuals that don't have AC, it's also our issue. It also affects us.
There's also the issue of environmental racism. Can you take a crack at that one? And what that is and how we see it around us.
Here in San Antonio, I know that there are some local colleagues that know so much more about this than I do. So I really apologies to them in advance. But that term, when it came about, really referred to the fact that when you would see negative environmental impacts from, say, a landfill or an incinerator, those tended to...
A refinery,
right. Those tended to occur in areas where you had minority populations or people who may not have had political power. But I will tell you, we see that not only in environmental pollution, well, in factories and things like that, but look at the expressway, right? And
concrete is an issue.
that comes through the West Side. That started long before the environment, what we call environmental racism, but it was already existing neighborhoods that were torn through here in San Antonio because that's where the people had the least political power to fight them.
Yes, yeah. All of that is wrapped together. And that's why when you mentioned the Arboretum, it's so beautiful that it's on the South Side. And of course, it's in an area that is far more pristine than others, and it's going to become such a great place for a getaway. All right. What will climate change look like in 10 years? And in 10 years? And in 20 years? If we're on the same sort of trajectory that we are today.
Sure. So many scientists have told us that our window for major action, major opportunity is closing. That
they're not saying it's closed. They're saying it's closing.
That it's closing, right? That the time that we have to do something about it is, and when I say do something about it, is what we talk about is as what we're trying to avoid is something called catastrophic climate change. There's no doubt that we've already had some possibly irreversible impacts of climate change. The heat would be one of them,
absolutely.
right? But what is called catastrophic climate change, where the ocean currents no longer move the way they're moving right now. So that's a whole different planet, right? Once you start, once you remove the ocean current. So what happens is we've been, as a species, right, postponing the hard action for later. And that just means that the actions we're going to have to take will be that much harder to take.
And more expensive.
And more expensive, of course. So I am hopeful that we will see the benefits of doing all these other things, like insulating our homes, utilizing fewer plastics if possible, and that we will be able to slow this change in the climate.
List some things that we should be doing. We talked about, planting many trees. On the West Side, our trees are dying, which is why the city of San Antonio has a program in place, probably in other parts of town as well, where they give you a tree and they even come plant it for you.
Okay. They do. There is on the West Side. I would love to see San Antonio's funding from the tree mitigation ordinance, and they have two separate funds for trees. I would love to see that utilized like immediately. It could make such a tremendous impact. So think about the heat we have right now, and 20 years from now, when trees that you plant today can start providing some shade, that would make a big difference. So, I'm on the board of the Greater Edwards Aquifer Alliance, and one of the proposals that they've made to the city, and I don't know if this is a formal proposal or a conversation that they have with them, is let's put some trees in the right of way, so right next to the street, right? So in between the home and the street, so that if you and I are walking down the street, 20 years from now, we will get that shade. But it also, of course, helps us with climate, and it helps us with keeping the temperatures down in those areas that are experiencing such heat.
I got a Mexican sycamore 6 years ago. It's already providing shade.
That's wonderful.
It's huge. Of course, they gave me a fairly mature tree.
Okay.
But once they planted it, boom, it is gorgeous.
The other thing I think we should be looking at is a workforce. Everyone's talked about ready to work and all that stuff, but when I say workforce development, I'm talking about workforce development in this field. There is so much that we can provide to our community if we're out there planting the trees, checking on them. because, there's many tree giveaways, right? And I know many people who are so excited to get the tree and bring them home, but they may not always know what's the best way to ensure that tree matures in a healthy way.
I'm guessing a lot of them die. I'm just telling you, because they're too little yet, and it requires far more of us.
Right. It's almost like bringing a puppy home, right? There's just some things you need to know.
I just know from some, family experience.
Not me personally, but
there's been some deaths in the family. So we need to do more.
There could be, there's a nonprofit that does this type of work already, but I think this could be a wonderful educational opportunity, but also financial opportunity, a workforce development opportunity when it comes to our population. The other aspect is green rehabs. So we have many, many old homes, right? And there is work going on in this with CPS and the Casa Verde program. Obviously, we could do this at a much broader scale for people who may not qualify for Casa Verde because their income's just a little bit, higher than that threshold. And that also becomes a workforce opportunity. And there are...
Good idea.
There are financial tools out there. And look, if we can come up with Project Marvel, if we can come up with, financing for the new baseball stadium, there is a way to finance this.
Amen. It would be a lot cheaper and would have incredible impact.
But also, we have to remember San Antonio is, for a long time, right, we were seen as a tourist destination. We still are, right? The convention center is going to expand. The Alamo is going to be absolutely transformed. We do want people to come visit.
And our culture drives people here. Our food, our history, our heritage.
But if 6 months of the year it's uncomfortably hot, we may not see that benefit.
Oh, okay.
So we need to, let's think in advance. What are the things we can do? And tree planting is absolutely one of them. And the rehabbing of old homes is another one.
Okay, so it is, we're in the middle of a mayoral election. So I'm going to ask you. Are you endorsing anyone in the mayor's race?
I actually endorsed one of the council in a council race. I endorsed in a council race Edward Munguia, who's
from 4.
Yeah. Councilwoman Adriana Rocha Garcia. Just someone who's worked in the community for so long, really knows the district. So I'm very excited that he made it through. But I think there are some really interesting things about this election, and I'm so glad you brought it up. We are, oh God, I'm just so excited. It's like what I would call like the perfect storm or a trifecta of things happening with this next term. Because you just had the election, the charter election, right? That extended terms to 4 years. So whoever is in that mayor's seat has the opportunity to do transformational things.
Meaning from 2 years to
4 years, right?
Yes.
So you've just increased the salary, right? Salaries began in 2015. Without that, I would not have been able to serve on the council. It was my commitment to be a full-time council person. And now you can have other members be full-time council members. And then many years ago, we had this transformation into single-member districts. So you have, theoretically, you've got the longer terms, you've got salary so people can dedicate themselves to this, and you've got representation. So I would say theoretically, this could be the most effective council in the history of San Antonio with those tools that they have at their disposal. But I would also, in case any future council member or mayor is listening, I would remind them that this is still a strong city manager form of government. And if you don't work together, you can't be that as effective as if you do work together. So that's going to continue to be important.
How would you rate Ron working with our city manager?
It seems to me like he had a great relationship with Cheryl when I came in, and continues to have a good relationship with Eric Walsh, at least when I was on the council. So
you're not endorsing anyone in the mayor's race?
Well, I really want to talk about how exciting it is that and in this term, it'll be in a couple of years, we will meet the 50th anniversary of single-member districts.
Oh, my goodness.
So to me,
that's a good reminder.
It's a very historic, in a sense, to me, it's a historic election because of that. And in 1975, so which is 50 years from today, I've been talking to Dr. Charlie Cottrell about this. 50 years ago was when he published a report that he did with his students, people like Rosie Castro, many other names, a study that analyzed the services that the city of San Antonio provided to the community, and it looked at it by sectors. So basically, was there equity in the services that was provided? And that was done 50 years ago.
And there wasn't.
There wasn't. Now, I tell Dr. Cottrell that this is like a landmark study, and I'm hoping that we'll do something to commemorate with it. So we're in conversation
definitely.
with.
So this year is the 50th or next?
This year's the 50th anniversary of that study.
Oh, okay. We'll get on it right away.
Yes.
We'll get us on a story right away, ma'am.
So that's 50 years ago, and I think we want to look back and see, okay, that's how things were then. How are things now?
I know.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I didn't get you to endorse anybody, but it's okay. You're going to go into that voting booth on June the 7th and vote your conscience.
I hope. We have two people from the outside, what's considered from the outside coming in, and Mayor Hardberger gave them all a bunch of advice in the paper, so I'm really glad that the Express News talked to him. I'm really excited about seeing a future woman mayor. So if you must know, that's where.
Yay! Okay, now we know. All right. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You can watch the video version of Nosotros on YouTube and listen to it wherever you get your podcast. My Metro column appears every Wednesday and Friday in the San Antonio Express News. And if you want to reach me, my email is eayala@express-news.net. Thanks for joining us, and see you next time on Nosotros.